Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 23 of Divergent Dialogues. Today, we are going to be focusing on alexithymia. Alexithymia is something that is very relevant for both autistic folks and ADHDers. And I thought I'd just start with a little bit of information around like what alexithymia is and how it relates to interoception, because for some people, these terms might be new. It's important that you know what we're talking about, because otherwise it's, going to get a bit weird. Uh, so, um, so, Alexithymia is a term used to describe difficulty in identifying and describing one's own emotions. So I think, like, particularly for autistic folks, it can be, particularly looking through the research, I think that there is quite a fixed idea of what identifying and describing your emotions look like. Like typically it's around being able to verbally express that. And I think it's important to, to consider that, although like, yes, definitely, like, I have a lot of clients that do experience alexithymia, but and usually that is to do with challenges with interoception, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But it's important to, I guess, assess whether someone is expressing their emotions in a way other than verbally. So someone may express their emotions through creativity, through drawing, through dance, through all these other different means. Or like one of my like something that for some of my clients that pops up is that they might be watching a TV show or something, and something's happening with one of the characters, and they're kind of resonating with what's happening for that character, and that's a way for them to understand and process and identify their emotions. So there's so many different ways that
one of my favorites is actually through like memes and reels. You just mindlessly scrolling on Instagram or whatever, and it's just like, yes, that panda bear rolling around absolutely demonstrates how I'm feeling. I need to send it to everyone.
Yeah, that's so funny. For me, it's always like cat videos with like little narrations over the top. But yeah, so I guess I wanted to acknowledge that it's important to consider whether there's an issue there with and challenge with alexithymia, or if it's actually just about exploring yourself, or if you're like a therapist or something like that, with your clients, exploring whether it's finding, I guess, a medium for expression, or there may already be a medium, but it's not acknowledged because it's not this verbal labeling of these emotions. So anyway, so I want to put that caveat. As I said before, alexithymia is strongly linked with interoception. So again, if you're kind of assessing what's going on for someone, if there's interoceptive issues, then that's like a big indicator that, it probably is alexithymia. So interoception is the sense of the internal state of the body. It involves the ability to perceive and interpret bodily signals such as hunger, thirst, the need to go to the toilet, feeling your heart rate, feeling pain, all of these things that go on inside of our bodies. And I guess, and that's like very closely related with alexithymia, because part of identifying our emotions is we need to be in touch with our bodies to be able to identify and distinguish those different sensations that we're having in our body and interpret that as an emotion. And I think what happens for a lot of autistic folks in particular is that the world is full on and our nervous systems are sensitive, and it can be really hard to be in our bodies a lot of the time. It can be hard to feel that dysregulation in our bodies and in our nervous system. So a lot of us, we learn to kind of detach from our bodies and kind of dissociate from our bodies in order to cope in, you know, in this world. So a lot of the work that I do, and I'd say probably Teena as well, is that particularly late diagnosed folks, is helping them to become more in, you know, to help to support them to be in their bodies more, but in a safe way where they feel safe and comfortable, and kind of integrating that emotional experience in with, you know, their day-to-day life, and you know, reflecting in that. And like a lot of my clients, they usually come to me and they're like, I intellectualize everything, but you know, I still, like, I'm not sure what's going on. And often I'm kind of like, I think what's happening is that you're not in touch with your body. It's hard for you to pick up on these emotions. So there's this massive chunk of data that's dinging in your body going, hey, like look at me, and you're not picking up on that signal. It's not your fault, but yeah, you're not picking up on these signals, and that's super important information that we need to be able to process all these things and kind of move forward in life. So yeah, that's, you know, I guess in a nutshell what alexithymia and interoception is.
Yeah. And I think, you know, what adds to the difficulty is that, you know, the classical view of emotions is, you know, suggests that we've got these predetermined neural pathways that, you know, this neural pathway is about happiness and it's the same for everyone. But when you consider like different ways that we sort of develop emotions that isn't about these predetermined neural pathways, then it opens the door for different people experiencing emotions differently and having a different expression. You know, like thinking about the person who laughs at a funeral, for example. Socially, that's like, oh my goodness, so what's wrong with you? But it's just because we've decided that laughter equals happiness. So therefore, that's an inappropriate response. But yeah, different ways that emotions can be constructed would suggest that for some people, that's their expression of sadness or discomfort or whatever. It could be anything for them, which makes it even harder.
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't laugh at a funeral. But like I am definitely one of those people where like I use, like, humor is like a big coping mechanism for me, and it helps me to kind of feel a bit calmer. Usually the people around me feel a bit calmer. And like, you know, I probably would find humor in things that people would be like, Caitlin, what the heck? Like, like that is really dark.
Yeah, me too.
And it's and it's not out of like disrespect or anything like that. And obviously, you know, I can't think of an example, but whatever it is, like I definitely do take it very seriously. But for me to cope with and process through some of these things, like my brain tries to find the humor in them in order to feel safe and interact with that and process that.
Yeah, same. And like, to be fair, if there's the opportunity for a good pun, I can't pass it up, regardless of how inappropriate the timing might be.
Oh, that's so funny. Anyway, so Teena really is excited to share about the history of alexithymia, and some of this stuff's new for me. So I'm really excited to hear about it.
Yes, well, it's not alexithymia specifically. It's more around like emotion regulation stuff in relation to ADHD, because alexithymia is much higher incidence of alexithymia in people with ADHD. There was a study done in 2021, interesting language, but it was 101 ADHDers, of which 49% were women, and then 100 healthy individuals.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, when did I become unhealthy because of my ADHD? Anywho,
Yeah,
it's a different conversation. But of the control group, of that 100 control group, 50% were women. And in the ADHD group, there were 47% of people had alexithymia, which was significantly higher than what was present in the control group. And alexithymia there's strong correlations with alexithymia and impulsivity and like emotional dysregulation. But so basically, the research is telling us that people with ADHD have really high rates of alexithymia, really, really high rates of emotion regulation difficulties. ADHD is a condition of difficulty regulating things, but it's not a part of the diagnostic criteria. It's not a part of the conversation at all. But yet in 1902, so that was a little while ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. A British physician considered ADHD, what was it called? Defective moral control of behaviour. Again, horrendous language, but it included emotional impulsiveness and poor regulation of emotions. So in 1902, they were understanding that emotion regulation and emotional impulsivity was a part of ADHD as we know it today. Called something horrible back then, but anyway. The 1960s to 1970s, their major clinical research was going on at the time. And so the researchers were Mark Stewart, Dennis Cantwell, and Paul Wender. And they include emotion as a core feature in their concepts of hyperactive child syndrome, which was one of the other names that ADHD was once known by. So in the 1960s, early 1960s, it was still understood that, emotion regulation was a core feature of ADHD. But then in 1968, the DSM-2 references for ADHD for the first time. It was then called hyperkinetic impulse disorder. But it's just anything about emotion regulation is completely excluded. And there's not a lot of reason for why they decided to just drop that part of ADHD.
Okay,
but
so there's no rationale behind it.
No, not it's not a big part of the conversation. But it's just more focused from 1968 onwards. It's much more focused on the impulsivity and the hyperactivity and those components of ADHD as opposed to the emotion regulation side of things. But I, for one, as an ADHDer, really, really recognise that emotion regulation can be a real struggle, Yeah. Frustration tolerance. I can go from 0 to frustrated, ready to throw my computer out the window. And those that know me, they know my computer is like one of my most favourite prized possessions over something small. Because of that, emotional impulsivity and dysregulation. Yeah.
I just backtracking a little to the rationale. I'm really curious, and I don't have an answer to this, so I don't know if I should even say it, but I'd be really curious to know other diagnoses that were added at the time. I wonder if they had, created some other diagnoses that they felt captured those symptoms better or something like that and kind of shifted it to a separate thing. I don't know. But I think it's pretty odd that they did that. Because as you said, like it's a big part of a lot of challenge for ADHD is a massive challenge, and there's a lot of guilt and shame around it as well, because you literally, you know, like you get so agitated so quickly, and you feel out of control, and you feel like you know, like obviously like you don't act on it, or you know, I don't. But you know, like Teena's not actually throwing her computer out the window, I can attest to that. But you know, it can feel really horrible when your body can just go from feeling quite regulated to super dysregulated. And yeah, and like unfortunately a lot of people, they may you know, kind of talk to people in a way that they don't really want to talk to them. You know, might yell or swear, and you know, and for some people unfortunately it does kind of escalate into other things as well. And you know, by all means, obviously there is a line, and you know, we always need to treat people with respect. But yeah, there can be a lot of guilt and shame around that. And then often once people are medicated for the ADHD, I find that people tend to have less issues with emotional dysregulation, less feelings of anger, and like, you know, still feeling feelings and feeling anger, but it's not like this burning lava exploding inside of you kind of situation.
Absolutely. That's definitely been my experience with medication, that it really did sort of help. It doesn't take away things, and it doesn't even take away the emotional impulsivity, but it certainly does help to slow things down and regulate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to consider as well is that when it comes to ADHD in particular, there's often this big emphasis on executive functioning. And, you know, emotion regulation is a part of, you know, executive functioning, but executive functioning in the sense of focus and attention, and how can I get myself to be able to be organized and do this and do that and da da da. And you know,
productivity to support capitalism.
Yes, productivity. Yeah, well, yes, precisely. And you know, I think it's getting better now, and there is more of a focus. But I think for a long time there wasn't really an acknowledgement or focus on emotional regulation for ADHDers, like particularly for children. I felt that it was more around you know, trying to change behaviors, and behavior kind of you know, which is probably representative of some of those past labels that were unfortunately given to ADHDers. But yeah, I do think that there is a more of a shift, and like particularly for the late diagnosed folks, yeah, I think it's a really important part of supporting them to be able to, like, you know, navigate life. Like it's all well and good if you can focus, but if you're really dysregulated, then you know you're not going to get far. It's really hard.
And I think I also think when it's not talked about and acknowledged properly, you know, through the assessment and diagnostic process, the emotion regulation stuff, when it's not acknowledged in that space, then we are kind of left sort of thinking and feeling, well, yeah, this emotional explosiveness that I experience, and that can be on, you know, like I'm not just talking about those challenging emotions like anger and frustration. It can be the same with excitement and anticipation and happiness, where it can feel so overwhelming that you don't know what to do with it. And when it's not acknowledged in the space of an ADHD diagnosis, then it's just something else that is you know, that I need to deal with because I'm too much, or you know, I'm too sensitive, or I, you know, carry on, whatever it might be, that those messages that you constantly hear. But when you understand that, you know, once upon a time, as in from 1902 to 1968, they were talking
to be
about
specific.
Yeah,
to be autistically specific. Yeah.
That emotion regulation and emotional impulsivity in, you know, connection like with like alexithymia was being discussed in the context of ADHD, then you understand it differently, and it is a part of ADHD. So it's not something else that is just a, you know, willful decision for me to feel this way, react this way, respond this way. It's understood differently, and it is then treated differently. And I think that that's really, really important. It's really important.
Yeah, definitely. And a big precursor to meltdowns, which we'll be talking about in the next episode. So if you're interested to learn more about that, you can tune in. But it's, we've talked a lot about ADHDers, and as we know, there tends to be a lot of co-occurring ADHD and autism. But it's important to acknowledge that autistic folks, there's research to show that autistic folks tend to have higher experiences of alexithymia and emotional regulation challenges than like non-autistic populations, not healthy populations, non-autistic populations. Because I was going to say, as I can attest as an autistic ADHDer that the co-occurring physical health conditions that I experience and my clients experience, that I don't know, sometimes I'm not sure that I would describe myself as healthy, but I'm I'm trying to embody health. But anyway, so yeah, like, as you can imagine, if you're an autistic ADHDer, like emotional regulation challenges, it's a thing. It's a thing that you're going to experience, unfortunately, and it's probably something that would be helpful to seek support for. And I think if we're kind of looping back to the interoception again, and in light of what I said earlier, is that if you are struggling with being connected with your body and with that interoception, it can make it really difficult to be in touch with your emotions and aware of your emotions. And, I think it is really important that, you do get support from someone, because it is hard. Like, this stuff is hard. And I think, as I said, if we're talking about the guilt and the shame, is like, I think some people, like, they feel guilt and shame, and, they'll come to see me, and it's really hard for them to openly discuss, their experiences, because they're probably worried that, I'm going to be like, oh my goodness, like, you're the worst person in the world, which obviously I totally would not be like that at all. But yeah, like, I guess what I want to say is that, this is a really serious thing that a lot of autistic ADHDers experience, and it's completely okay to reach out for support. And, particularly if you're seeing someone who is an autistic ADHD themselves, I can tell you 100% that they can, like, have had similar experiences. So they're not going to judge, because they've been there. And, I guess Teena and I can attest to that, definitely.
I have to say, I like it when I'm working with younger children and their parents, or one of their parents comes along and they're looking for help around strategies for emotion regulation and things like that. And you can see it in a child's face that they feel so ashamed of the things they've done, when they're in that sort of heightened state. And I personally think that they're incredibly brave for coming along and being a part of that appointment to start with. And I love watching their expression change when I tell them, stories of my own dysregulation and, some of the mistakes I've made along the way when I'm dysregulated, and that, it's okay. It's okay to talk about these things, and because you're here and you're asking for help to figure it all out, and it's absolutely okay. It's absolutely okay. And they sort of, they look and they smile, and it's just, you can just see that sense of relief that, okay, So I'm not a naughty kid for these
Yeah.
things that I've done. I just, yeah, it's a part of ADHD. It's a part of autism. And if I learn about this stuff, then maybe I can do it a little bit differently, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something else that's important to highlight as well is that often I might get a referral to see like a young child, like maybe like primary school aged, or could be high school as well. And the typically the school has kind of prompted for the parents to seek therapy and support. And usually on the referral letter it's saying, hey, can you help with emotional, like teaching emotional regulation skills and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yep, sure, like great. I think that's really important. But I think something that's also important is to teach co-regulation in the context of children and parents, can even in the context of partnerships as well. And not kind of being like, okay, here's your emotion regulation skills, now you go and do your thing. And particularly children, I mean, even adults, that's okay as well if you need support with co-regulating as well. But particularly small children, like year 1, year 2, it is like unreasonable to expect that they're just going to come to therapy for a few sessions, get some emotion regulation skills under their belt, and then there's going to be no more challenges, and that they're just going to be able to go on their merry way and do it themselves. Like sometimes it does take parents or teachers or educators to demonstrate and model regulation in those strategies and do it together, and things like that as well. So we just want to be supportive and realistic for people, and don't make them feel like they're all alone in it.
And I think you're right. Like having a toolbox full of emotion regulation strategies does not mean that it's reasonable to expect a person to skip through life never experiencing dysregulation ever again. It's just a case of, hey, here's a bunch of stuff that might help you along your journey, but whatever comes your way is okay. Let's just manage it together.
Thank you to everyone for listening in to this episode of Divergent Dialogues. If you really like this episode, then check out our other episodes. We generally have a different topic every month, so there's lots of great stuff there. If you check out our Substack, there's also blog posts that are written by Teena and I around those topics. Teena kind of looks at it more from an ADHD perspective, and myself more from an autism perspective. But and next episode is about meltdowns. So if you're interested in listening to that, tune in a fortnight.